Stories change us, inspire us, encourage us, and keep us going. Green Chair Conversations is the place where story and change meet through authentic conversation as we learn and grow from a diversity of voices. Welcome to Green Chair Conversations. Hey everyone, we are here on location with Kellan Bartosch, Davin Bartosch, owners and founders of Wiseacre Brewery Company, a local brewery here in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, we are going to dive into their story and talk crafting passion. Yes, I know it's cheesy. Yes, I know it's crazy, cliche, but these are some of the most passionate guys that I know, and they have worked their tails off making their dreams a reality. And so I want us to dive into that and talk with them today. Kellan, Davin, thank you guys for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
And usually I'm welcoming you to our studio, but you are actually welcoming us essentially into your place.
I was gonna say thank you for being here with us. This is where we always are.
This is where you always are.
I
love doing this here. This is really, really fun. Okay, so I wanna dive into your story. Talk to me a little bit. Wiseacre, opening a brewery, where on earth did that even begin? Where did that dream essentially culminate?
Somewhat of a theme today, just when we end up talking about our history. It feels, longer than the time that we've actually been planning this. That would be about 15 years, I think, from the time that I remember we shook hands. We're like, we're gonna do this one day. Like, it was very, our dad was there to mediate.
Really?
Our mom did not want to come.
Tell me I want to hear about this. I didn't know this.
Well, our dad can be pretty serious at times and really goofy at times, but he wanted to make sure that we were communicating well about our future goals. Yeah. Our mom was like, I'm out of it. I don't want y'all to do this together. I want you guys to be brothers and best friends and don't hurt each other's feelings. So anyway, but we kind of made the goal, we're going to do this one day.
Yeah.
And it was funny because you would tell people we're going to start a brewery, and then someone's like, oh, I want to open up a dog thing where you can paint, and they're like, no, we're really gonna do this. It's hard it was just an idea at the time. But
yeah,
from that time until now has been about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
But I do think, in general with all of this, it has a lot more to do with just our personalities and our upbringing that kind of led us to where we are. But brewery specifically, we shook hands, we were at Soulfish. Davin went to brewing school in Chicago. He'd been home brewing at that point for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
He'd been gathering equipment and books at home.
Yeah.
Went to brewing school in Chicago, brewed in Chicago for 5 or 6 years professionally, and then I went the other way, got a job in a beer distributor, went to grad school at night, got a job with a brewery.
Yeah.
Moved back home.
Yeah. 9
years ago.
And here we are.
Yeah.
And the name Wiseacre?
Our grandmother used to call us that. It's kind of a little bit of a term of endearment, and also kind of a way of just saying that we had smart mouths and weren't doing what she wanted us to do exactly.
Yeah, and we think beer should be fun. We had a bunch of names over the years that we kind of we're sorting through what we wanted. A lot of them were very serious and revolutionary, but we ultimately think this is beer. We should take it very seriously here, but when it leaves our care, it should be fun. Beer should bring people together. It's a social thing. There's a time and a place to sniff it and analyze it, but that's not most people what they should be doing. It's just enjoy it. So we wanted the name to reflect that.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, you guys aren't really doing it justice on how hard you've worked and how, you make it sound really easy, but you have a whole thing on your website. You have a map of Kellan, or Davin, you were in Germany. Mm-hmm. You were doing all of this crazy cool stuff. Kellan, you're at Sierra Nevada. You guys went all over this map to kind of get the experience to be here today. And that's pretty cool.
It was a lot, and I really give Davin more credit for it. I think I was ready to jump off a cliff and let's start it tomorrow. And Davin was like, well, I got to get better at this. And so he went to school. I remember he was done with school, and I was like, let's go. And Davin was like, no, I don't I've had theoretical, I need practical. And so he was someone's assistant. And I was like, now it's time. And Davin was like, no, it's not. So we kept pushing the experience, but Davin, to his credit, his goal was always I want to make the best beer in the world.
Yeah.
It's not this is fun and cool. That's where he stood. So
yeah.
I was forced to get more experience by Davin's requirement to be more experienced.
Yeah.
I think when you get really into anything, it's almost for a long time you just are realizing that you don't know anything about it, Mm-hmm. And even though you're really excited and you're going through enormous amounts of information, it's just more evidence that you're missing a lot of the other information.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would like to call my position brewmaster, and I've always just like loathed that term because you don't really ever get to the end. You can't. No one can master brewing. Every time, we learn something new every week here. We get better at what we're doing every week here, but we're certainly not masters.
I like that. That's really good. Okay, so why brewery? Like, why beer? Why brewery? Where did that culminate from?
I think for me, it was a way to sort of do something nerdy, but it still looked cool from the outside, I guess. It was a way to. I always loved cooking, you know, and this is just cooking, with science. As well, and it's kind of cool because there's not a whole lot you can do. Once you start down the path, like you kind of pick. You pick where your goal is as far as a beer is concerned, and then you try to hit it, but you get less and less able to change the final product the further down the line you get.
So stakes are high.
It's a big puzzle, You
can't add, garlic at the end,
right?
Like if you're cooking to balance it out.
It's a very creative process, and I think that's really neat.
It is creative, but it's also like janitorial, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's definitely, there's creative parts to it, but there's also like a lot of very concrete, black and white, this is how you make this taste good. Deviating from this would be a mistake.
Lots of janitorial, lots of, you're throwing dead flowers in boiling water. Like it's not that exciting when you, peel back the curtain a little bit, but, Davin, I guess, closet dork might be a way to summarize his goals in making this a reality. But I guess as little brother, we both finished school, weren't quite sure what we wanted to do. The homebrewing thing started for him his freshman year of college, and started out as a way to be, I think, cheap, but also kind of be the, creative.
Very cheap.
Yeah, very cheap. Creative, scientific person that he is, but so we didn't know what we wanted to do. Just like you finish college and you're like, I don't really know, I just went to college. And so I was encouraging him for a while, like, you got to figure out how to make brewing your career. You're not going to find another career path. I had seen him growing up. He went to cooking camp and would, do like show and tell cooking for my parents' friends. And he was really good at chess and racquetball and like these obscure things that he could kind of hone in by himself and be great at. So as his brother, I wanted him to find a career path. And then I was doing that. And then I was like, I don't know what I want to do really either. Let's start a brewery one day. And so it was more his kind of passion and interest that I knew he could be great at. And then the entrepreneurial spirit kind of led us down the path.
That's really cool. Okay, so let's get practical for a second on crafting passion. But let's get practical on like how you guys do that, because you really have worked hard. There's a lot of layers to this. You and I were talking a little bit about gifts. We were talking about less maybe passion, more what's bringing you joy, some pieces like that. So I would love to talk a little bit about what would you say to the person that is wanting to pursue their passion and they're struggling making that dream a reality. Like, what would you say to that person?
I certainly think passion is a huge part of what we're doing here, but I think we actually get a little bit offended when people are like, not offended, that's not the right word. People are like, I love the vision or the concept. That's the word that gets me, I guess. Because it feels like it was that at some point, but that was like 15 years ago. And then, we had to take the passion and fun part of it and like really, how do you become good at this? Like, the beer business, it has a vernacular and a way people talk and work and act. It's like you have to learn it the same way. Like, I couldn't do these guys' jobs. And so we went and learned those things, and we took, I think, our passion and made them into jobs and careers. And so by the time we opened Wiseacre, we were just doing the jobs that we had been doing for years. We're just doing them for ourselves now. But we, had spent 10,000 hours to put, the Outliers terminology of like mastering something. We had done that before we opened up, and I think that's critical. I also think, we're doing jobs that are our natural bent. talked about Davin going to cooking camp and his ACT scores on science reasoning or whatever. Like those are all a part of like why he's great at this. It's not like we thought beer was cool, because I would be a terrible brewer. Like, and I don't mind saying that. Actually, I tried to be Davin's assistant for a while, and it was not good. If I didn't do exactly what he said, it wasn't a good thing. But we all have different gifts, and like that's a part of, I think, our success too. So I think people, identifying their skill set, their gifts, and putting it into work, we feel like that's our story more than like, oh, it's this concept and passion thing.
What I would say to that person to answer your question is just that, passion only gets you so far, and if you're not willing to like work behind that, it's really hard to get past. I mean, you can really love something, and if you don't get out there and get experience, especially with other people that are already doing what you want to do, it's really hard to know whether or not you're any good at it, or whether or not it's something you could be successful and you could make into an occupation, and not just, I do this at my house, like I bake bread at my house and I love it, but like it's not really good enough, like to I'm not going to open a bakery, like it's
well, and to the I don't know if there's a better word than giftedness, but to that point too, I think if it's not where people are gifted, they're going to be miserable doing it too. And that's something I think, as we've tried to hire people, and we've made plenty of mistakes, but I think that's kind of the top of our list, is like, it doesn't really matter if you think it's cool. Like, if the work's got to be there, but if it's not where you're kind of gifted, you're not going to be happy either. That's not going to be good for anybody. So I think there's certainly not every day is full of joy, but I think when you're in a path that lines up with your gifts and your talent and your experience, like there's a better path to success, because it's going to bring energy and joy to you to do that job as well. So.
And I think it was an interesting conversation you and I were having. Kind of a sidebar is breweries not making beer, opening a brewery. I mean, that's not everybody's thing. Opening a whole business, kind of what you're saying, to having making bread. Like, you love doing it, but that doesn't mean you should be opening. Right. I mean, I think there's an important piece in that. And even too, touching on, Hope has a good recovery community. So it's important to acknowledge the fact of like, we're having a conversation over passion. We're having a conversation over where your guys' gifts are and passions are, but that may not be everybody's gig, if you will. So.
For sure. And you get, some of that where people are like, oh, ultimate guy thing, whatever. And it just, like, it never feels like that. Like, bros and beer, like, that's not, it's never felt like that for us in general. But
was that one of the names you guys were playing around with? Bros and beer?
And it is, and also we don't think beer's like the end all be all either. So it's not, the all passion side of it. I mean, I think just like probably most people in the country we know people in our family and friends who struggle with this. So we're not like trying to force anybody to like. Davin's wife doesn't like beer, but we acknowledge that for some people it's beer's not a good fit for their life, and that's fine with us. It's not. We don't think it's the most important thing. I do think beer can be important. It's a part of culture. It's a part of people's lives in Memphis and in Tennessee, hopefully, and it's a thing that people want the same way they want a good restaurant scene, or they want the Grizzlies to be good. Like, it's important for people's lives as a part of culture. But whatever.
But what I love though is that you guys are not only crazy passionate, crazy talented, crazy gifted at what you're doing, but you're also really intentional. And so I think that that's an important piece as well. Like, you're making beer and you're worked your tail off to get the experience to get to this place, but also you are intentional in what you're doing. I mean, we're sitting in a space right now that has intentionality all over it. And so we're in the downtown location for anybody listening, but you have sculptures outside that have activists and artists, and you have history attached to that. I mean, talk a little bit about the intentionality. Your art. Who is your main artist? Like, it's Rachel Briggs, right?
Rachel Briggs.
And you graduated with her, is that right?
She's younger, but went to high school with us. Her sister was my age, but an incredible artist, and just in terms of intentional, I think she is out of this world. I mean, she's so talented. Everything we do has its own piece of art attached to it, but. One of the great things about her, and she's a wonderful friend of mine too, she puts so much into these labels, and it might be like some inside joke, that nobody will ever get, but I do think when people look at it, they can tell that somebody has put so much energy and thought and love. It's not like a graphic design, hop and call it a day. Like she's putting in, little Easter eggs that reference her cousin and her family, but like somebody can see that this has been done with great love and care and intentionality.
And to clarify, I mean, you have a local artist that does every single one of when you have a new beer, you launch a label, then you have she comes up with a whole design. So you guys collaborate on this, and then she kind of comes up with that's really neat.
It's a process, and I would give our dad a lot of credit. I think he's a good storyteller, a great storyteller, and doesn't miss the details in stories. And I think we approach a lot of things, like that because of him. I also think in our industry, like you've got to be great at everything at this point. When we opened, there was less than 2,000 breweries. Now there's 9,000.
Yeah.
So, the beer has to be great, step one. The rest of it has to be amazing too. Yeah. And I think in some ways our dad's ability to tell stories and miss the details, I think really influences, and not miss the details, influences the way that we approach everything, including a beer launch. Yeah,
and correct me if I'm wrong, like you also were intentional about making, I remember when the Broad, the original location, opened up, you were intentional on making that like a family friendly place. Kinda. I mean, you guys had an open space, you had young kids at the time. Yeah. So I mean, it kind of had to be family friendly, right?
Yeah, when we opened the brewery, I had a 1-year-old. Yes, so it definitely, and he's like basically grown up in and with a brewery as his other brother. That's what my wife likes to call the breweries. It's like our extra child. But yeah, I think beer, I feel like is a social beverage. Like, it's something that you can have a couple beers and you're not going to be messed up, and you can have a conversation with people, and I think it's like a healthy environment for children to be in and around, to see adults acting like adults, and I've always wanted to make sure that kids were fine and kids were allowed there.
I mean, you've had concerts outside, you have people playing and then you had the cornhole. I mean, you have things that make it.
Yeah, and there's not TV. I mean, we have, the ability to drop a projector screen down, but I think that's intentional because we want to encourage conversations. I think it's a very, European, look at our industry in general. And it's not like we're the only people that have done this, but I think Davin spending a lot of time in Europe is influential there, where there's, a lot less alcoholism, by the way, but I think it is a more communal thing. I think there's, much more lower strength beers are consumed in Europe on a regular basis. So, and there's less taboo, like, around, like, this is evil, bad, don't look at it, and that kind of leads to some dangerous behavior. So anyway, I think that it's been with an open mind and more of a family-friendly and community aspect. Partly because of that European influence, and also I think because Davin had a baby when the business started as well.
You were thinking through that way.
And I've looked into child labor laws, so Bishop has not broken any yet.
I don't think they really apply to us, though.
We can't make them miss school.
Right. But other than that, you can force them to work.
That's true.
Yeah, I remember early on too. I remember Tommy and I making that. Remember Tommy was making that chalkboard frame that's in the Broad. Because you guys, I mean, and that's another piece of intentionality. You have included people. Like literally, if I was to think of your story along the way, it'd be like you're really passionate and you really are like great with people. Like you have a community of people and you've really leaned on them, and that's been a really cool thing as well.
Well, a lot of other people deserve a lot of credit too. It almost feels wrong sometimes for us to sit here, especially even staff that we have. I'm talking about giftedness. There's a lot of things that we're both bad at, and I think we have a lot of people that are great in the right position. So that's a huge part of our success. Certainly just our staff, but also just the city at large. And we wrote down a list of people and what they were good at, and it's kind of amazing thinking back on Broad and people being there, putting up chalkboards and hanging furniture and doors.
Cleaning and getting, that's really neat. That's really neat. Okay, so main lessons. I mean, you guys have had a long journey. It's longer than even like what you were saying, Broad's been open. Talk to me about like the main lessons you guys have walked through or learned along the way.
I think it's been super important to try to at least for me, to try to keep humor and like try not to. I mean, this is all really serious stuff. Like, it's a business, and we have employees, and we're all like very dependent on one another. But like, at least for me, like, if at the end of the day we can't like joke around and have a beer and talk about stuff that we made mistakes on, and like, how we'll get better or whatever, it just becomes toxic really fast. Like, I think it's really important for people to be around each other and be able to joke and have a good time at their jobs. I think, you were sort of mentioning Dad earlier, but I think we get a lot of that from our mom, just like this, being able to like constantly make jokes about what you're doing, even if it is really serious, like just because you don't want anyone to like dread coming here,
Yeah. I think that's really good. That's a really good lesson.
Right, and I think it seems like fun and games on the surface, but to Davin's point, it's a business. We have budgets and we have goals, and there's things that deserve to be taken seriously. But to have the ability to laugh, I think, especially at yourself, and be self-deprecating maybe to a point, it has been important, I think, for people. We talked about some of the things already that I think are super valuable to success with, finding people to fit in the right positions. I think in the workplace in general, wherever that is, that can cause problems. Somebody thinks beer is cool, doesn't mean you're a good brewer. So we try to identify in the interview process. I think that's kind of the most important place to do it. And we've certainly made mistakes, ourselves in managing people, but finding the right people and the right fit, I think is big. I think it's helped us be successful because of our gifts, but also the people that we have. We've had amazing people. I think the other big one for me, I think, is trust. And that's been, I think, we don't talk about it a lot, but as brothers, like we almost, we have a higher, calling that we answer to than the business. Like, the fact that we're brothers is going to supersede the business part one way or another. But I also know that, like, I don't have to be concerned about Davin's intentions, and where he's coming from. We're going to be completely honest with each other. I mean, he and I, we're 20 months apart. We can argue and have it out, and like, we don't skip a beat, know, and that's. I think that's a huge benefit. That's a challenge in any relationship, but we can tell each other exactly how we feel, and we can, I would say, usually are over it immediately. Sometimes. Not only trusting of each other, but certainly folks that work here that have taken on big jobs, big responsibilities. That has been the thing that, I think allows us to be able to go home, stop working, be present with our families. And that's enabled us to grow. Is people that we can trust, that are great, that are here.
I like that. That's really good. Any final thoughts, particularly in regard to crafting passion? I want to see how many times I can say that in this interview.
If I can't think of anything, I'll craft an email to you afterwards, or maybe I'll I'll whittle out a piece of wood and send it to you. Oh man.
I like the humor piece. I think that's important in a piece of, you want to be passionate, and then and it's easy to talk about something you're excited about, something you're joyful on. You get to the business side of that can kind of almost suck out the drive, passion in that. And so I think the humor layer kind of balances that some. I like the people piece. I like the trust piece. I think those are all really, really good reminders.
Yeah, and I guess with business, and back to the fun thing, our dad really, I think encouraged that as well. I think our mom can be a jokester and certainly taught us to laugh, but I don't know if this is appropriate, but for some reason I always think about this story with Kanye West, and I don't really have a lot of opinions on him in general, but his mother passed away, and somebody, he said, saw him, this is from years ago, somebody saw him at the airport and he was laughing with his friends, and someone who didn't know him walked up to him and were like, how can you laugh at a time like this? And he was kind of like, look, I'm living my life. I am sad. My mother passed. I'm so sad, but I'm also like, I'm able to laugh and be with my friends. And this is work, it's business, but it's also life, and you've got to be able to find humor and joy, and even when things are serious, kind of be like, is it really that serious? So he's better about that than me, I think, at being able to bring that air. Maybe sometimes too good.
Yeah, I was about to say probably too good.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having this interview, Kellan, Davin. Thank you guys so much for being here with us. Or letting us be here with you.
That's right.
It's really letting us be here with you. So thank you for letting us do this. I really appreciate this and your time. And that is a wrap for our Green Chair conversation with Kellan and Davin Bartosch. We so appreciate you guys being here with us today. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Green Chair Conversations podcast, and our brand new Instagram account, Green Chair Conversations. We are so excited you're here with us, and I cannot wait for next week's guest. I look forward to seeing you then.